unfamiliar with you, if you would just tell us your name, a bit about your background, and really what you've been doing for the last several years.
My name is Joel Fuhrman. I'm a medical doctor, a board-certified family physician, nutritional researcher. I'm an author of numerous books, over 10, 6 of which have been on the New York Times bestseller list. I've been working hard on writing books and seeing patients, and I also am president of the Nutritional Research Foundation and on faculty at Northern Arizona University Research Division, Health Science Division, and have a research office there, and we conduct some research on preventing cancer. And I also enjoy taking care of patients and helping people make complete recoveries from serious illnesses. And I have a medical office in New Jersey, and I also have a retreat in San Diego, where I'm there half the month, and guests come in with serious illnesses, and we specialize in people who have food addiction and food issues, who are overweight, to help them resolve that, not just lose weight, but get the skills, the knowledge, and to change their personality and desires and food preferences, so they leave with the ability to continue to enjoy eating healthfully and stay in the program to reverse their illnesses, get well from diabetes, get well from heart disease, reverse autoimmune illnesses, and of course have a much better, healthier, and happier life in their future. So I enjoy work. Even though I'm very busy and write and speak and lecture, I'm still involved in patient care and enjoy that very much.
If you would, please summarize the main point of your book, Fast Food Genocide.
Well, I think a lot of people recognize today that the American diet, with all the fast food and processed foods, lead to a population that's not just overweight, but a high rate of cancer, heart disease, strokes, and dementia. I think the part they're not that clear about is that as it's destroying your body and increasing risk of heart attack and cancer, they don't realize it's destroying your brain, affecting your personality, your judgment, your intelligence, and whether you get mentally ill or demented in later life. And what I'm saying right now, 100 years ago, 1 in 100 Americans were mentally ill. Today, 1 in 5 are mentally ill. So on one hand, I'm saying that the food we eat creates our personality to a degree and leads to extreme and profound unhappiness and an overall dysthymia, or lowering of people's emotions and creativity. On the other hand, there's a tremendous destruction going on, tragedy, that's disproportionately affecting poor people and people living in inner cities in what we call food deserts. And when we study these populations, we see they're not doing well as far as the medical care. They're not doing well as far as not just their health care, but the health outcomes. They have more cancer, more heart attacks, more kidney dialysis, more kidney failure. And it's blamed on sometimes their race, and there's bigotry involved in that. And I'm showing that no matter what the color of your skin, that this is related to diets people are fed. And Caucasian populations have the same poor outcome, with intellectual impairment, affecting their career, their economic viability and economic potential, earning potential later as they get older. That we're talking here about how poor nutrition destroys people's future. And it's blamed on who they are or what their genetics are, but it's really not due to that. It's really due to how poor nutrition destroys the brain and destroys your human potential, and also how processed foods and sugar and fast foods are the gateway drug to alcoholism, drug use, and illegal drug use, and even crime, and how destructive our present food climate is to the well-being and future of our country and of our race, and how the degradation of the American diet over the last 50 years has destructive and far-reaching tentacles that penetrate almost all aspects of life. And we have to take a look at this and look at it seriously. And it's a very fascinating book that I think that people find very interesting. I don't think it's coordinated evil, but we know, for example, after the Civil War, when Black Americans were first freed, there were more centenarians, more elderly people, advancements in economic advancements in education and intellectual achievement. And then so it wasn't until the Jim Crow laws were passed and they were driven into the up out of the South into inner cities and where they couldn't get food did we start to see these problems start to develop. So there's a lot of issues going on, and even pellagra, which was a major illness back in the late 1800s, which was niacin deficiency from the corn and molasses and pork diet they ate back then, caused homicidal, suicidal behavior and aggravated violence in the South. And what I'm saying right now is that nutritional deficiencies and poor nutrition has aggravated violence for centuries. And good nutrition and proper nutrition makes the people that are less angered, more peaceful, more happy, more intelligent, and more considerate of other human beings.
The media often reports that alcohol in moderation is part of a healthy diet. What do you think about alcohol's impact on our health?
Well, I think alcohol is a known carcinogen, and any carcinogen in small amounts is not going to be that evident to be that bad, but as amounts get higher, it gets much more easy to study. You know, it's difficult to pull out all the risk factors and things people do wrong because they do so many things wrong. So it's hard to give so much, credit to one thing because that's why it doesn't look like eggs are so bad because they're eating meat and they're eating cheese and they're eating fried food, they're eating sugar, and how do you pick out one thing of all the 50 bad things they're doing? But of course, alcohol is a significant risk factor for cancer. In women, for example, most of the studies that we look at show that even one glass of wine a day increases risk of breast cancer somewhere between 10 and 12%. So it's significant. It's a significant carcinogen. And the idea that it's protecting your heart or making you live longer, it's more poor science. You're not going to, and people want some reason they can continue to utilize things that are harmful to them. They want to think what they're doing is good for them. We know the most powerful anti-cancer lifestyle interventions we can do are to keep ourselves thin, eat a diet rich in vegetables, eat a wide variety of healthy plant foods that have rich in phytochemicals and antioxidants, and don't overeat, and don't drink alcohol.
Some people say beans and grains didn't exist until 10,000 years ago and therefore are not our natural foods and our bodies aren't programmed to eat them, and therefore we're meant to eat animal products. What does the best science have to say about this?
Well, that's ridiculous to begin with. It's a ridiculous statement. What does it matter what does it matter if lions don't usually eat apples or they don't eat nectarines? Who cares? If we took a lion and we fed it a nectarine and they added 10 years to their life, then it's good to give the lion a nectarine. It doesn't matter what their lion's ancestor ate. The point is we have more than 100 studies out today that show that eating beans extends human lifespan. All the blue zones are areas that eat beans. And all the studies on beans show that they have anti-cancer effects. In the Nurses' Health Study, for example, beans were the food that showed the best relation with lower rates of breast cancer in women. We have so much substantial and undisputable evidence that beans lengthen life today, so much so that if you're not eating beans, maybe there's something wrong with your way of thinking or ability to your logical thinking. Maybe you just don't want to give up your meat. Maybe you don't like beans and looking for some rationalizations, like people want to drink their alcohol and want to think alcohol is healthy. Or they want to think that they might want to think that eating, chicken pot pie is healthy or something too. But unfortunately, we have solid evidence and we give more credence to studies that meet 3 different criteria. Number 1, look at thousands of people, not hundreds, thousands. Number 2, they go on for decades, not 2 or 3 years, but decades. And number 3, look at hard endpoints like death or heart attack or cancer. When we look at studies that look at hard endpoints, we see all those studies are in agreement. We look at long-term studies, they're all in agreement. More animal products, more premature death. More vegetables and more beans, longer life, less death. We're all going to die, but hopefully we're going to die later, and we're going to die with our good health intact until we get very old and be able to fully enjoy our life. And that's called a healthy life expectancy. And all the studies we have on diet styles that are high in vegetables and beans and nuts show that it improves mortality. There's decreased death rate from both heart attack and cancer, and makes for a healthier life expectancy, better function, mental function and physical function in later life. So you can have a hypothesis, you can have a theory, but fortunately, the science we have gives us the most evidence to think sensibly and logically to give people better advice today.
Are hemp, flax, and olive oils good for us to eat? And should we try to include these oils in our diet, or should we try to avoid them?
I'm not insulting you or responding back in a snarky way, but I have to say that it's almost a ridiculous question, Because if you ask a person which is healthier, sesame seed oil or sesame seeds, because the sesame seeds have the lignins and the calcium and the phytonutrients and the inositol and the sterols and stanols. But when you put the seed and you turn it into oil, you've removed probably at least 90% of the beneficial factors that are in sesame seeds. Which is healthier, walnut oil or a walnut? And how does the body view it biologically? How does the body assimilate it? In other words, one is absorbed very rapidly into the bloodstream and stored as fat. The other is absorbed very slowly and burned for energy. So the point is that it's almost a ridiculous question that anybody would believe that an oil is healthier than the food the oil was derived from. It's actually a ridiculous question. The facts is that natural foods in their natural state before they're processed are healthier, and when they're processed, their calories are concentrated. And if you were somebody starving or anorexic, I have given people oil and recommended they eat some oil in my life because I had some anorexic patients that wouldn't consume calories and I had to have them gain weight. But the reality is most people are overweight, and we're not looking for ways to make them gain more weight. We're looking for the ways they can lose weight. That means we have to reduce the calories in their diet. And one of the biggest scams ever perpetrated on the modern world is that oil is health food. The fact that the most calorically concentrated, no fiber to turn down the apostat, no significant nutrient levels, just pure fat and concentrated calories, and putting up those extra calories on people who are already overweight is going to bring them good health. It's utterly ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. The facts are too is that flax seeds have a huge amount of anti-cancer lignins and very beneficial nutrients, and those nutrients are lost in the processing of oil. Why wouldn't you eat the ground seed over the oil? Sesame seeds contain lignins too. Why would you destroy that? Why wouldn't we eat the whole food and get more benefits? And that's what the studies show. They show that the whole nuts and seeds have incredible and powerful benefits at reducing all-cause mortality and enhancing lifespan. You don't see the epidemiologic studies following people for decades looking at heart endpoints, showing that adding oil to the diet made them live longer with lower heart attack rates and lower stroke rates. Just not true. It's nonsensical.
Author Chris Kresser, who believes in paleo diets, says that according to studies, eating dietary cholesterol does not lead to higher rates of blood cholesterol in most cases, and even if eating saturated fat and dietary cholesterol does lead to higher saturated fat rates or blood cholesterol, it still doesn't correlate to higher death rates. Do you agree with this? Why or why not?
Well, it's kind of silly argument anyway, because we're talking at soft endpoints versus hard endpoints. So in other words, it's true that eating more cholesterol in a diet that already has a significant amount of cholesterol, moderating the cholesterol a little higher, a little lower doesn't change your body's production of cholesterol very much. Saturated fat has more of an effect on body production of cholesterol. Nevertheless, modulating these things moderately up or down are not the major factor in imparting your risk of heart attacks or strokes, because animal products in general aren't just straight cholesterol. They're full of saturated fat, cholesterol, animal proteins, and there's a lot of factors going on when you eat animal products. The nutritional profile of animal products in general, they have some negative effects from saturated fat and cholesterol, mostly which increase risk of certain cancers, by the way. But it's also just the low fiber, low phytonutrient, low antioxidant levels, and high degree of those concentrated calories lead to development of certain bacteria in the gut that produce TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, that is pro-inflammatory and excites atherosclerosis. What I'm saying right now, I can give you one after another different mechanisms via which animal products promotes premature death. And we can go over those mechanisms, and cholesterol is one of them, how cholesterol increases estrogen production. We go over those mechanisms. But the point is, when we look at every diet with less animal products versus more animal products, we always see that as animal products goes up in a nation's diet or a population's diet, so does the risk of cardiovascular death. For example, a study that had more than 125,000 participants, and their average following the people more than 22 years, showed that as the animal product went up, consumption went up, from very, very low amounts to very higher amounts, we saw a dose-dependent increase in cardiovascular deaths, with more deaths with every 2 to 5% increase in animal product consumption. So what I'm saying, the studies are consistent, overwhelming, and non-contradictory. There's no studies that show that, no long-term studies looking at hard endpoints like death, that show that diets high in animal products reduce cardiovascular death, cancer death, or all-cause mortality. All the studies show that they significantly increase cancer deaths, increase cardiovascular mortality, and increase all-cause mortality. So there's arguments, but the arguments are designed to trick people, to give them excuses, and to distract them from the reality is that diets high in animal products kill people. A diet to be protective has to be rich in plant foods, because plant foods contain the phytochemicals and antioxidants that animal products do not contain. So a diet that's not rich in phytochemicals and antioxidants can't be an anti-cancer or lifespan enhancing diet. So as we ratchet up more oil in the diet, and as we ratchet up more animal products in the diet, we're proportionally reducing our antioxidant and phytochemical penetration of the diet. The micronutrients are going down in direct proportion that you eat foods that don't have those nutrients in them. So as you eat more processed foods or oils or animal products, we see the quality of people's diets go down. Now what these people do is they try to make an argument to show that eating junk food like donuts and white rice and sugar and white bread is worse than eating meat or eggs or something like that, which is also an irrelevant argument. We don't buy a car by comparing it to a junkyard wreck, and because one food is a little better or worse than another, just because eating processed carbohydrates might be more disease-causing than eating an animal product, doesn't absolve animal product of the problems it has. They're both bad, and nobody's saying you should eat refined carbohydrates, or at least not many people I know. We're saying that you shouldn't be eating processed foods and refined carbohydrates, and you shouldn't be eating a lot of animal products either, because our diet has to be, for any diet to be lifespan promoting, the vast majority of calories have to come from unrefined plant foods, period. There's no other way to live healthfully.
How does someone protect their thyroid?
The same way you protect against any disease, because there's obviously, women have more hypothyroidism caused by Hashimoto's thyroiditis. They have more autoimmune attack on the thyroid. It happens when they're younger than men do. Their thyroid cells are more sensitive, and they're particularly sensitive to endocrine disruptors and chemicals in their food supply. So by staying away from processed foods and fast foods and packaged and plastic packaged foods and potato chips, and staying away from the foods that are high on the biological scale of toxicity, then we're going to protect our thyroids. It's a subject that people are distorting like crazy, because when you eat a healthy diet, it moderately slows your metabolic rate. When you eat less calories, it makes you live longer, and it's beneficial to slow a metabolic rate down. And a lot of people think taking more thyroid hormone or thyroid stimulants or looking at ways to stimulate the metabolic rate is better for their health, and it's just aging them faster. So even though I'm saying that if you have hypothyroidism, you do need thyroid hormone so it doesn't get too low, but the amount of thyroid hormone that you're given by your doctor should not push you into the high range of free T4. It should keep you into the lower half, and you shouldn't maximally suppress your TSH to help you lose weight. We should still use thyroid replacement hormone moderately and not overprescribe it. It's better people control their weight with eating right, not by trying to lower their cholesterol or keep their weight down with excessive use of thyroid hormone.
Do you eat a 100% plant-based diet? And if so, how long have you been doing it?
I don't know what the word plant-based means, because the word based means more than 50%, or the majority. So most Americans eat a plant-based diet, because American diet is about 30% of calories from animal products. So they're already eating 70% plants. And most of the plants they eat are French fries and cookies and crackers and rice cakes and breakfast bars and chips and bagels and junk and soda and candy. Those are the plants they eat, processed plants. So a plant-based diet has no meaning to me. I need to be more specific with what you're asking me. I think what you're really asking me is, do I eat a vegan diet? Do I eat any animal products at all? Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
The question is, it's hard to remember when I last had animal products, but I have had animal products on rare occasions. I'm not so fanatical that it hasn't passed my lips at some occasion or something one another, but I think it's good to not have animal products in your diet. But I have had animal products, a few times over the last year, I would say. I've had tasted something with animal product in over the last year or so.
What advice do you have from all the research you've done on the best way to deal with memory issues and memory loss?
Well, I think that's a very important question, and it's a concern I have about vegans, given some advice by some popular vegan gurus who are telling people that they don't need to take any DHA for potential DHA deficiencies that occur in a vegan diet. In other words, DHA and EPA are commonly thought of fish oil because fish is a rich source, or certain fatty fishes are a rich source of EPA and DHA. The controversial question here: do all humans on a vegan diet produce sufficient amount of EPA and DHA without taking a supplement or any food source of EPA and DHA? And these nutritional advisors are advocating their followers that nobody has to worry about that. And that a vegan diet will give you adequate amounts if you eat healthfully is just not true. In my 30 years of practice as a physician specializing in caring for this community, I've seen numerous people, more than 100 people, that develop severe problems, major depression, or it's dementia. I even have patients right now who are in great health in their 90s, but they're demented because they were on vegan diets and didn't take DHA. And I've taken their blood and found the DHA levels to be almost non-existent. And there are studies that document brain shrinkage with DHA deficiency. In other words, what I'm saying right now is the studies show that as the omega-3 index and DHA level goes down to very low levels, we have higher probabilities of shrinkage of the brain and dementia developing. It's not the only cause of dementia. Many other causes of dementia. The lack of fruits and vegetables can cause dementia. B12 can cause dementia. But one cause of dementia is severe DHA deficiency can cause dementia. And it's not, and there were studies done also on 166 vegans documenting, who are not supplementing, by the way, with DHA, documenting their level of omega-3 index and DHA in their bloodstream, demonstrating that many vegans, about 25% actually, were severely deficient in DHA to the point where brain shrinkage may have occurred had they aged and not without fixing that. I'm adamant, and I think it's dangerously irresponsible that you have vegan leaders giving some hypothesis or belief system to reassure people that nothing's going to happen with them, when in fact it does happen. And who are they to be taking these risks with people's lives like this? It's a tremendous amount of, how should I say, egotistical callousness to put people at risk and not tell them honestly that DHA deficiency is a possibility on a vegan diet. And they should be concerned about it and either check a blood test to make sure you're one of the people that's producing enough, or take a supplement to make sure you have some DHA exposure. So it's something I'm very passionate about and have to be yelling about, because I see in my practice for the last 30 years too much needless damage and needless tragedies occurring due to this bad advice.
In Dr. Stephen Gundry's best-selling book, The Plant Paradox, he says lectins are microscopic proteins that plants evolved to defend themselves from predators, including insects and animals, and that includes humans. They're essentially indigestible and have the unique ability to increase the permeability of your intestines. That means if they can pass through the wall of your gut, and they will be treated as foreign invaders by your immune system. This causes an inflammatory response, which can set the stage for a host of diseases as well as weight gain. So what foods are rich in lectins? Generally speaking, all grains and legumes have more lectins than anything else. In some cases, pressure cooking can destroy the lectins. Nightshade vegetables, squashes, and select nuts and seeds are also rich in lectins. Do you agree with Dr. Gundry? Why or why not?
I don't think any legitimate nutritional scientist in the world agrees with Dr. Grundy. I think that they can't agree because it's a made-up fallacy and a scam. What do you want me to say? If you go through his book and you pull the references he quoted, the references don't support his hypothesis. All the studies on longevity show that eating beans make people live longer and reduce risks of cancer. We know that there are lectins in beans that can cause a problem if they're not cooked. But when they're cooked properly, which is the way people eat them, they don't have a problem, and they extend lifespan. So his attack on plant foods is nonsensical and fabricated. That lectins, actually, the lectins that are cooked in beans that remain actually have beneficial effects, anti-cancer effects, immune stimulating and stem cell stimulating effects, and can even have effects on building bones and have anti-cancer effects. There's no documentation there's negative effects of the things he's claiming about. He's making all types of claims that are unsupported. Where's his peer-reviewed evidence for the claims he's making? He's making radical and exaggerated claims, and he's lying about what the research shows. So it's information that can't be trusted, and that book should just be burned or, disregarded as nonsense. It's an embarrassment to be in this field of nutritional medicine and to be a nutritional scientist, to have somebody like that making such claims based on insufficient and non-existing evidence.
There are so many paleo, keto, Atkins, low-carb authors and books. Why are so many people who are well-educated, credentialed, and smart concluding that the low-carb diet, not the whole food plant-based diet, is best for human health? And what are the most compelling, important, and convincing studies that make you believe that a whole food plant-based diet is the proper diet for humans and that a diet that includes animal products is not?
It is redundant to what was already said before. And, that you can try to justify any kind of diet you want to eat. And people love their animal products and don't want to give them up. And I think that I can take a diet called the Twinkie diet and feed people Twinkies. And you know what? They'll do pretty well in the short term. Because when you're eating nothing but Twinkies, you won't want to just keep eating huge amounts of calories. You get sick of eating Twinkies, so you keep your calories down. You're just eating and you'll lose a little weight, and your triglycerides will get better, and your diabetic parameters might improve, and you might even, but those are called soft endpoints, and those are small numbers of people with short-term studies. And cutting out the carbohydrate from your diet can help people lose weight. Smoking cigarettes can help you lose weight, especially if you snort cocaine and smoke cigarettes can help you lose weight. Those short-term endpoints are not necessarily going to devise what's going to have you live a long life. For that, we have to look at long-term studies for decades. So, a little redundant here, but I have to say this, pick my words carefully. Every single long-term study, every single study looking at hard endpoints, every one of them, not one, shows that diets high in animal products can extend lifespan and make hard endpoints like heart attacks and cancers go down. And there's not one study, there's numerous studies that are well done. These people who are trying to advocate eating a high animal product diet always have an excuse why this study is not right and that study is biased and this study didn't look at that and this study showed this, and they try to twist and disregard every study that shows the same information. And what I'm saying is the evidence is overwhelmingly, you can't argue against it because they all show the same thing. And the same thing is true with nuts and seeds in a diet, by the way, too. All the studies on nuts and seeds, whether they're supported by the nut companies, whether they're not supported, whether it's done a large number of people, small number of people, looking at cancer, look at heart attacks, they all show the same thing, that nuts and seeds included in the diet decrease all causes of death. Cardiovascular death, cancer death, and all-cause mortality. Whatever your rationale is for trying to think is you don't need them or it's not good or they're bad, this people just try to, whatever they want to believe and whatever their advocacy is based on, whatever they want to prove their legacy or their egos or promote their own diets, they have to be consistent with the overwhelming preponderance of evidence, and they're not. The overwhelming preponderance of evidence shows a wide variety of plant foods in the diet, and it extends human lifespan. And we have an unprecedented opportunity in human history today. We can eat a wide variety of different plant foods because we can fly in foods from different parts of the country. We can keep them in refrigerators. We can freeze the wild blueberries and eat. We can eat all types of foods in our diets and keep our wide spectrum of healthy natural foods, which enables us to live a long, healthy life free of disease. And by not taking advantage of that modern nutritional science and eating a diet with a lot of animal products and cutting out fruit and cutting out vegetables and cutting out beans or cutting out nuts and seeds, which some vegans are trying to do, that's insanity. It's just stupid.
The low-carb diets recommend getting your body into ketosis. What's wrong with that?
We're doing more studies all the time. Last year in 2018, a study came out that showed that as people lowered the carbohydrate in their diet with type of paleo or keto promoting diets, the risk of death went up. It's a theory, it's a hypothesis. You could live your life based on these crazy hypotheses, but if you have a scientific and a logical mind, you want to try to weigh evidence, and you want to look at all the evidence that's available, and not just pick the one amount of data you like to support some crazy idea you have.
What's happening to our healthcare system, and what will happen if nothing changes? How will we afford to pay for everyone's medical care?
Well, I don't know if I can answer that question. I can say this, that if people ate a salad and a big bowl of vegetable bean soup and a piece of fruit for lunch, if we get the whole America to eat a salad, of vegetable bean soup, and a piece of fruit for lunch, we could dramatically reduce healthcare costs. If we can just get some public service announcements on living longer to prevent cancer and to prevent heart disease by eating a better diet, even if our population just improved one meal a day, we'd probably see healthcare costs go down by 30 to 60%. We could solve this problem pretty easily just by getting better food into our hands of our population. You know, right now we tell people, take folic acid to prevent birth defects because American women are deficient in folate. Folate's not folic acid, they're deficient in folate. Folate comes from green vegetables and beans. American women, and men too, aren't eating vegetables and beans. They're not, and they have abnormal babies because of it. So instead of telling them to eat vegetables and beans, we give them a pill, folic acid. That's just an enabler, which now lets them not have to eat vegetables and beans to get folate. And because of that now, we have higher rates of childhood cancer because mothers who don't eat vegetables have kids with childhood cancer because we're giving them the folate pill instead of telling them they have to eat vegetables. It's all about the same thing. We're always looking for some pill people can take to solve their problems. Like take a pill so you can smoke 3 packs a day of cigarettes and not get lung cancer. Life is not a fairy tale. People looking for some magic they could take, some magic. The reality is the magic doesn't work. If you want to be healthy, you have to earn it. You have to live a healthy lifestyle in a very healthy diet because everything you put in your mouth matters a real lot. I'm not advocating public service announcements be the avenue at which we change America. There's a lot of things we have to do to make this work. I'm also suggesting that we have to teach education about nutrition in the school system, from all through elementary school too, because the one most critical information that affects our health destiny is what we put in our mouth. And what we eat as a child affects our whole future for the rest of our life. And we're the only country in the world today that feeds our children in school cafeterias a class 1 carcinogen, which is like processed meats. The point I'm making is now it should be reading, writing, arithmetic, and nutritional science. We have the whole comprehensive approach about changing the information that gets out to our population and let them know they have control of their health destiny, and we can improve the health of Americans. And I have lots of great ideas there. And my book, Fast Food Genocide, goes into that to a certain degree. But I'm not saying one thing is the way we're going to solve all the problems. And why do doctors have the role of teaching nutrition? They're not educate the population. They're not the educators. They're not, they don't have time to educate people. They're dealing with people with issues that are emergencies. I agree that they should be saying something about it, but it's not going to solve the problem. So if doctors were trained, it wouldn't solve the problems. It has to be a total societal change from hitting it from lots of different angles.
What are the health implications from eating salt? How much of an effort should we make to avoid it? It seems to be in everything.
Well, there's salt in all natural foods. It's there for a reason. And usually in natural foods, they contain the right amount of what we need. The amount of sodium we get from greens and beans and onions and celery and cucumber and lettuces, there's sodium in there. We get about 500 to 1,000, 700, 800 milligrams from natural foods. About half as many sodium as calories. Nature didn't blow it, didn't make a mistake. We don't have to take a different source of sodium and add it. There's already the right amount of magnesium and phosphorus and potassium and sodium in natural foods. The problem is that as in modern times, we're adding huge amounts of salt on top of what natural foods contain. And as we pass a certain threshold of sodium, we have a lot of problems that could develop from it. And one of those problems is high blood pressure. And one of those problems is microvascular inflammation and microvascular hemorrhaging that can weaken the endothelium, the interior lining of the blood vessels, laying the blood vessel with a higher propensity for rupture and breakage, causing a hemorrhagic stroke. Now, a hemorrhagic stroke is possible in a vegan, by the way. It doesn't protect you from hemorrhagic strokes. There are 2 types of strokes. There's ischemic or embolic stroke, which is caused by, a plaque breaking off, or caused by the same thing causing heart attacks, a clot in the bloodstream. But a hemorrhagic stroke is a break of the fragile blood vessels. And some studies indicate that higher levels of cholesterol and more meat in the diet, causing more atherosclerosis or thickening of the blood vessels, protects the fragile vessels in the brain against hemorrhaging because the vessels become thicker walled. And that vegans and lower cholesterol people are at higher risk of hemorrhagic stroke, especially if they eat salt. The point I'm making right now is that being on a plant-rich, or vegan diet doesn't protect you against hemorrhagic stroke if you're still having salt. And maybe you're at higher risk on a vegan diet or having a hemorrhagic stroke if you're still using a lot of salt. It may be more important for a vegan to watch their salt intake, because if you're not going to die of a heart attack or a ischemic stroke, and your rate of cancer is going to lower, then what are you going to die of? We don't want to just substitute one cause of death to another. For example, in some of the Asian countries, like Japan, South Korea, they have much less heart attacks and much less ischemic strokes, but much higher rate of hemorrhagic stroke because they eat more salt than we do. They have lower bacon and meats, more vegetables and fish and salt, and because they have 10 times the incidence of hemorrhagic stroke. We don't want to emulate that. Salt is a major risk factor for death if you take in large amounts of it. I'm saying right now is that food has enough for most people, real food. You don't have to add added salt. There are some individuals, though, certain genetic or medical conditions that may require a little extra salt. Most people do better with as little salt as possible. But even if your person needs a little more salt, it still should be regimented to the level you need and not just think that any amount is okay. Because any amount is okay, that way of thinking gets a lot of people in serious trouble.
Brian Clement from the Hippocrates Health Institute says that today's fruit is picked unripe and has been hybridized to be much sweeter than it was in nature many years ago. He says that fruit sugar is still sugar and that healthy people should limit fruit consumption to no more than 15% of their diet by weight, or around a piece a day. He says people fighting a health challenge should eliminate it completely until they're better. Do you agree with his recommendations?
I don't agree with it. I think the studies show that eating more fruit, especially certain berries and cherries and pomegranates and guava and kumquats, and there's a lot of fruit that has very powerful anti-cancer effects shown in studies, and even anti-diabetic effects. And I think that trying to eliminate fruit to that degree makes the diet very unpalatable, and it's not going to extend people's lifespan by cutting those foods out. There may be an individual, such as a diabetic that's poorly controlled, who needs to restrict fruit in the interim period so they can get their diabetes under control. But I don't see it's even necessary in most cases to resolve type 2 diabetes, who get well and complete recover and get rid of their diabetes utilizing fruit in their diet with much higher percent than that. I usually recommend people can eat up to 3 pieces of fruit a day, not 1 piece, even if they're diabetic. And I do recommend people have 1 serving of berries or some kind of low sugar fruit or high fruit with high level of flavonoids per day. So I think that restriction on fruit is too severe and unnecessary.
Can too many cooked beans or whole grains raise our blood sugar and make us pre-diabetic or diabetic?
People can overeat on any food. Can too much, that's a really not a specific answer. In general, people shouldn't be overeating any food. And they should be trying, because one of the features of living longer is just moderately caloric restriction a little, making sure you're slim. If you look at an overweight person, they're overeating something. They got to look at what they're doing wrong, and maybe they're overeating whole grains too. But if you're eating a wide spectrum of natural foods, enough vegetables, enough onions and mushrooms and then a reasonable amount of whole grains and beans is going to be weight loss favorable, not weight loss unfavorable. But because people are indoctrinated from their little kids to try to overeat, and they've practiced overeating and eating huge amounts of food, it may be necessary for some people to watch the amount they're eating and even restrict their consumption of whole grains or beans.
Does it make a difference for health if you eat beef from organic grass-fed cows versus factory farm cows?
That's a hypothesis, but it looks like most of the studies that we have on eating more meat causing premature death and more death rates are done on populations that are eating organic or naturally raised animal products. In other words, much parts of the world, Argentina, Australia, most of their meats are naturally grazed or organic, and we still see high rates of these serious causes of increased risk of premature death from higher meat diets, even when those kind of meats are used. So it's a concept because these naturally raised or grass-fed meats have a better omega-3, omega-6 balance. There's maybe some have less certain types of residue, and they may be somewhat better, but most likely the amount that they're better is not sufficient to result in a change in lifespan parameters, a significant change in how long people live, because it's the other qualities of the animal products like the high amount of protein and the lack of fiber and phytochemicals and how fast the complete proteins enter the bloodstream, revving up body production of growth hormones, producing cancer. There are other reasons why they have negative effects outside of their contamination issues or their omega-3 balance. So it's most likely the case that the studies we have now and the studies in the future will confirm that as well, that switching to organic meats is not going to make the eating of meat harmless or no longer dangerous. It's still dangerous.
How do you help people who are dealing with food addiction?
Well, you and I know, and a lot of people out there know, that there's so many people who want to get healthy, and we're giving them so much hope in letting them know that they can lose weight, they can get rid of their diabetes, they can melt away their heart disease, they can even get well from autoimmune conditions and things like fibromyalgia and migraine headaches. But they're so food addicted, and there's so much obstacles in their way that they don't seem to be able to control their behavior enough to get well, even though they want to do that. And I've devoted my life to trying to help these people. And even at my facility, I have a retreat where people can come and stay for 4 to 12 weeks. And a lot of people, they need to stay for 6 to 12 weeks. They need to stay a long time because 1 or 2 or 3 weeks may help them, but it's not going to help them long term if they go back to eating their unhealthy diet. It's not enough time to reverse food addiction. And they need the psychological counseling. They need the emotional nurturing of why they turn to food to solve their pain and their emotional problems and their loneliness, and how that's been developed in their life. Some people need intensive counseling to be able to eat healthy and recover from food addiction. And they need time and distance away from their food addiction triggers in order for the addictive nature of food to go down again, like staying away from cocaine long enough. And so I've put together a facility with all the right features of education, cooking classes, emotional support, physical and psychological support, to enable people to stay in a safe and enjoyable environment, enjoy the transformation of their health, and recover sufficiently emotionally too, so when they leave, they can continue to live this way for the rest of their life. Learn and become an expert in living this way and enjoying it, learning how to cook it and make it, and let's devise something that you can stay with and willing to live with for the rest of your life. Because one thing I want to make absolutely clear, that anything you do for a short period of time is of no benefit to your long-term health unless you can maintain that forever. So going on some radical program that you can't maintain is not the answer to your long-term health problems. You've got to figure out what's going to enable you to reverse your disease, lose weight, get to a healthy weight, and actually structure your life and your capabilities to be able to maintain doing that, and for the rest of your life, or the benefits aren't going to be realized. And I am particularly passionate and enthusiastic to be able to tell people that they don't have to be sick. That even the people, because I've seen so many people that have wanted to be healthy, learned about what to do, and just don't do it or can't do it. And I felt bad about those people not having help or getting into health tragedies and calling me up from the ICU. I should have listened to you, Dr. Fuhrman, but I got myself into the ICU and I'm over and over again. So I'm seeing a lot of incredible, miraculous health transformations occur. And the health transformations occurring in people who couldn't do this on their own. So I want to make sure that people know that there's help available and they can get well, and even if it's too difficult for them to do it alone, they can get support for this. The easiest way to find me is drfuhrman.com. I have lots of recipes there, information, books people can read. I have a supportive membership services where people support each other, set up meetups, and we have vacations planned for people together, and we have asked the doctor, we have people able to read and supply questions to myself and my medical staff and food addiction counselors, and if they need to, they can get information about my Eat to Live retreat and see if that's right for them or something they need to consider.
I want to ask you what you see as the importance of the Real Truth About Health conference. As you know, we're putting this out here for free to the public.
I'm very glad that I have an opportunity to participate in the Real Truth About Health conference. I think it gives me and other speakers with scientific integrity the opportunity to speak directly to the public and get information out to motivate and instruct people how to live a healthier life. So it's very important. So I don't sit down and I don't view every single speaker, and I can't give my stamp of approval on every person that speaks. But I think people should be able to review what's being said in an open environment and review things with a questioning eye and think about what's science and what's the support and the logic behind the presenter and come to their own basic conclusions. And I think that this is an excellent conference that gives people a large assortment of very educated and interesting speakers. Not that I think all the information is something I could support, though.